The conversation, which seemed like business as usual, suddenly turned into a tense confrontation that left the entire audience stunned. A fierce clash made the atmosphere in the studio stifling. In a moment of emotional explosion, Charlize abruptly walked off the stage, leaving the audience shocked by the unbelievable turn of events. A television moment became the talk of Hollywood. Social media rebutted, the press jumped in, and Charlize's name once again dominated major headlines. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The Jimmy Kimmel live stage glowed brightly, with lights sweeping over the roaring, clapping audience as Charlize Theron stepped out. Her form-fitting black suit accentuated her commanding presence, her blonde hair gleaming like a crown. She gave a slight smile, waving to the crowd, but her eyes were sharp, as if scanning every corner of the studio. Jimmy Kimmel, standing behind his desk, flashed his signature grin, friendly yet with that familiar mocking edge. He shook Theron's hand, a quick but firm grip. Then they both sat down, the spotlight zeroing in on them like an arena. Kimmel kicked things off, his voice sharp with a hint of his usual sarcasm. Charlize Theron, ladies and gentlemen, the uncrowned queen of Hollywood. Unbroken Spirit is tearing up the box office. Is this your way of telling the world, don't mess with Charlize? The audience roared with laughter, but Theron only smirked, responding in a low, confident tone. It's a story about a woman who doesn't let anyone define her, Jimmy. I think audiences will see real strength, not the Hollywood polished kind. Her words carried weight, prompting nods and applause from some women in the crowd. Kimmel, ever the sarcastic comedian, leaned in with a mischievous grin. Oh, real strength. I love that. But come on, Charlize. Tell us, how do you keep that queen vibe when Hollywood keeps pushing younger actresses onto the screen? Theron tilted her head, her eyes flashing like a sharpened blade. Jimmy, if you want to talk about strength, ask about my work. But if you're going to poke at my age, I'm afraid you're picking the wrong game. Her voice was calm but cutting, sparking cheers from some in the audience, while others whispered uneasily. Kimmel raised his hands, laughing loudly as if to diffuse the tension. Come on, Charlize, I'm just saying you're a superhero. I mean, atomic blonde Mad Max. You kick the world's butt while I'm just, well, kicking these mics. The audience burst into laughter, but Theron didn't smile, her gaze still locked on him. Undeterred, Kimmel pushed further, his tone dripping with sharp wit. So I heard you did your own stunts in Unbroken Spirit. Is that true, or did you have a team of stunt doubles like, Charlize, we got this, go sip a latte? The joke drew big laughs from the crowd, but Theron gripped her chair tightly, her eyes now blazing. Jimmy, you think I need stunt doubles to do my job? Or do you think women like me are just good for standing around looking pretty? She paused, letting her words sink into the air. This movie is about women who don't need anyone to handle things for them. Maybe you should watch it before making those kinds of jokes. The audience erupted, some chanting Charlize, while murmurs rippled from the corners of the room. Kimmel, still smiling, but with sweat now glistening on his forehead, pressed on. Oh, I get it. You're the I-do-it-all type. I respect that. But come on, Charlize. The audience wants to know more about you. Like, well, your life off-screen. Any juicy rumors? Who's making the Queen's heart race? Theron sat up straight, her eyes piercing through Kimmel. Jimmy, I came here to talk about a meaningful film, not to have you dig into my personal life like some tabloid. Her voice was ice cold, each word like a knife. If you want rumors, go read Twitter. I'm here to talk about justice, not drama. The audience fell silent, then a few broke into fierce applause, especially the women in the front rows. A man shouted, "Lighten up," but was drowned out by the clapping. Backstage, Lisa stood in the wings, hands on hips, her eyes shooting daggers at Sarah. See, I told you not to push her. Sarah, eyes gleaming, whispered into her headset. Let it roll, the ratings are exploding. Lisa shook her head, knowing Theron wasn't one to be manipulated. Kimmel, clinging to his comedic instincts, tilted his head, his tone laced with sarcasm. Hey Charlize, you're right, we need the truth. Unbroken Spirit is a knockout, right? A real feminist powerhouse. So how's it feel to be, well, the queen behind it all? The audience chuckled, but the laughter was hesitant, some sensing the conversation slipping. Theron pursed her lips, her fingers tapping lightly on the chair, like a warrior sizing up an opponent. "Queen," she repeated, her voice low but sharp as a blade. "Jimmy, I'm a producer, an actor, not a character in your fairy tale. This film was built to tell the stories of women fighting for justice, not to wear the label you want." Unfazed, Kimmel smirked, his sarcasm sharpening. "Oh, Charlize, I get it. You're a machine producing, acting, doing it all. But come on, don't you ever just want to kick back a little? I mean, someone at your level's probably dreaming of a yacht vacation, right?" A few in the audience whistled, but there were also faint boos. Theron's brow furrowed, her voice icy. "Kick back? Jimmy, I'm not here to rest. I'm here to work, to tell stories Hollywood usually ignores. Maybe you should try that instead of digging into my age." Her response landed like a punch, sparking cheers from the audience, some standing and clapping fiercely. Backstage, Lisa stood frozen, her fiery gaze fixed on Sarah, who was giggling and whispering into her headset. "Keep it going, this drama's gold." Lisa gritted her teeth, muttering, "You'll regret pushing her this far." On stage, Kimmel, sweat glistening on his forehead, tried to regain control, his voice now tinged with defensiveness. "Hey Charlize, no need to get heated. I just want everyone to have fun. Come on, share a behind-the-scenes story like do you ever lose it on set?" The audience loves those stories. He winked, hoping to steer Theron toward a lighter anecdote to cool things down. Theron didn't take the bait. She leaned back, her voice low but commanding. "A behind-the-scenes story. Fine. Every day I walk into places like this, knowing I'll be turned into a story, a diva, someone too sensitive, or just a pretty face. I'm tired of fighting to be seen for who I am, but I keep doing it because stories like Unbroken Spirit deserve to be told." The studio erupted in applause, a woman shouting, "Well said, Charlize," sparking a wave of support, but there were also murmurs, a man yelling loudly, "Chill out, it's just a talk show," dividing the crowd. Kimmel, now visibly rattled, tried to regain control, his voice sharper. "Charlize, you're turning my show into a political forum. People come here to laugh, not to be preached at." He waved his arms as if pleading to the audience. But Theron didn't flinch, responding with deadly calm. "Laugh? Who gets to laugh, Jimmy? You. When you turn my work into a joke. Or the audience, when they're fed outdated stereotypes about women." Theron continued, her voice resonating. "I've spent my career telling real stories. You want entertainment? Do it without trampling on others." The stage felt like a burning arena, with the audience cheering and booing, the spotlights fixed on Charlize Theron, who sat motionless, her eyes blazing like fire at Jimmy Kimmel. Kimmel, feeling the pressure from the crowd and Sarah's gaze from backstage, tried to regain ground with his familiar sarcastic tone, now tinged with bitterness. "Charlize, you're a warrior, no doubt. But come on, the audience came to see the star Charlize Theron, not, well, a feminist speech, right?" He turned to the crowd, raising his hands as if begging for support. Some laughed loudly, but the laughter was drowned out by applause from others, especially women, who felt the power in Theron's words. Theron didn't budge, her gaze piercing Kimmel. "The star Charlize Theron," she asked, her voice low but sharp as a blade. "What do you want me to do, Jimmy? Stand here smiling and pretend everything you say is funny? I came to talk about a meaningful film, but you just want to turn me into a punchline for ratings." Kimmel, now clearly flustered, tried to pivot, but his voice began to waver. "Come on, Charlize, that's not what I meant. I just want people to know more about you. Like, well, the fun stuff. For instance, I heard you're really dedicated to parenting. Any tips, like with your daughter Jackson?" The studio fell silent, as if everyone sensed a line had been crossed. Theron stood up, slowly but with commanding presence, her eyes like a fire that could burn the stage down. "Jimmy," she said, her voice low but resonant, "you know I asked you not to bring up my personal life. You think you have the right to drag my kid into this for views?" Kimmel, sweat glistening on his forehead, tried to salvage it with a forced smile. "Oh, Charlize, I just wanted a friendly chat. People love you, they want to know the real you." But his usual confidence was gone, and Theron gave him no room to backtrack. She stepped closer to the desk, her eyes never leaving Kimmel. "Friendly? You call digging into my personal life friendly? I'm here to talk about a film, about women fighting to be heard. But you and this show just want to turn us into entertainment." The audience erupted, half standing and cheering, especially women who felt Theron's words hit home. But there were also boos from the back, a man shouting, "Lighten up, it's just a talk show." Theron turned to the crowd, her gaze sweeping over them, and responded, her voice steely, "Entertainment doesn't mean disrespect. If you want the truth, demand it, instead of letting them feed you cheap jokes." Her words were like a rallying cry, sparking fierce applause from some, while others muttered in dissent. Backstage, Lisa stood in the wings, her eyes blazing, ready to step in if things worsened. Sarah, in the control room, still smirked, whispering into her headset, "This is the moment that defines the show." But Lisa, unable to take it anymore, muttered, "You're pushing this to the edge." On stage, Kimmel, now completely on the defensive, tried to salvage the mood with an apologetic tone. "Charlize, I didn't mean to offend. I just wanted a fun interview, right, folk?" He turned to the audience, but the response was scattered, some clapping weakly, while others were still caught up in Theron's intensity. Theron, unwavering, responded with a calm but powerful voice. "Fun? You think turning my work, my story, into a joke is fun? Hollywood has tried to do that to me my whole life, and I won't let you do it on this stage." Charlize Theron stood tall by the desk, her eyes blazing, like a warrior raising a flag. Her declaration, "I won't let you turn my work into a joke," still echoed, making the studio air thick as if before a storm. Jimmy Kimmel, his face flushed, clung to the desk, his fake smile gone, replaced by a mix of confusion and anger. He tried to hold his ground, but Theron had turned the stage into her own platform, and the audience was now a chaotic sea of emotions. Kimmel, with the last scraps of his pride, stood straighter, his voice trying to maintain its sarcastic edge but faltering. "Charlize, you're going overboard. This is a talk show. People want to laugh, have fun, not hear you lecture about Hollywood." He gestured toward the audience as if begging for agreement. Some responded with whistles, a few shouting, "That's right, Jimmy," but the cheers for Theron drowned them out, especially from the women in the front rows, one raising a fist and yelling, "Keep going, Charlize." The studio was a furnace, every shout adding fuel to the fire. Theron, unshaken, took a step closer to Kimmel, her gaze locking him in place. "Lecture? Jimmy, I'm just telling the truth. You think the audience only wants to laugh? Or are you afraid they want more, like respect for the women who built this industry?" Her voice was steely, each word a bullet, igniting the audience. A group leapt to their feet, clapping furiously, while another corner booed, a man shouting, "Who does she think she is?" Theron turned to the crowd, her eyes sweeping over them like a beam of light, and responded, "I'm someone who spent a lifetime fighting for real stories. And you, what do you want from me?" A fake smile. Her words were ablaze, torching the studio's control. The audience spiraled, cheers and boos blending into a storm of sound. A young woman raised her phone, screaming, "Charlize, you're an icon," while someone in the back yelled, "Sit down, this isn't a soapbox." Phones lit up across the room, capturing every second, the hashtag #TheronVs.Kimmel spreading like wildfire on social media. Kimmel, now nearly desperate, tried to cut in, his voice high-pitched with a hint of bitterness. "Charlize, you want the truth? Fine, the truth is the audience came here for entertainment, not to hear you complain about Hollywood." Theron gave a faint smile, joyless but full of defiance. "Entertainment? You call turning women into punchlines entertainment? I've seen how Hollywood treats people like me, reducing us to looks, age, or personal lives. But today on this stage, I'm not letting that happen." Her words were a declaration of war, sparking another audience eruption, half standing and cheering, the other half booing fiercely. A man in the middle row shouted, "She's too sensitive," but was drowned out by applause from others, especially a group of women raising their fists. On stage, Kimmel, now completely rattled, pointed at Theron. "Charlize, you're turning my show into a mess. You think you can stand here and criticize everything?" His voice trembled, the sarcasm replaced by raw defensiveness. business. Theron, undaunted, took another step forward, her voice low but commanding. I'm not criticizing everything, Jimmy. I'm criticizing how you and shows like this turn our hard work into a circus. I've poured blood, sweat, and heart into Unbroken Spirit. If you can't respect that, then I have no reason to be here. The floor manager, pale as a ghost, frantically signaled the band to play and cut the tension. But Sarah shook her head, her eyes gleaming as ratings soared to a peak. Lisa, in the wings, clenched her fists, her gaze torn between pride and worry, knowing Theron was walking a dangerous line. A security guard approached the stage, but Theron's glare made him hesitate. She stood there, like an unyielding mountain, her eyes sweeping over the audience, as if challenging the entire world. Kimmel, taking a deep breath, tried to regain composure, his voice trembling, but still clinging to a facade of confidence. Charlize, come on, you're turning this into a war. I just wanted a fun interview, to show the audience you, Hollywood's big star. He spread his arms toward the crowd, hoping to pull them to his side, but the audience was more divided than ever. A group of women in the front row leapt to their feet, chanting Charlize, keep going, while another section booed. A man shouting, this is a talk show, not a soapbox. Theron, undeterred, took another step toward Kimmel, her gaze like an invisible blade. Big star? She asked, her voice low but razor-sharp, echoing through the mic. You think I'm here to flaunt a title? I came to talk about Unbroken Spirit, about women fighting to be heard. But you, Jimmy, you just want to turn me into a prop for your show. The audience erupted, half standing and cheering, the other half booing fiercely, the studio shaking like a Roman arena. Kimmel, now completely out of control, pointed at Theron, his voice high-pitched with anger. Charlize, you're ruining my show. The audience came here to laugh, to relax, not to hear you criticize me or all of Hollywood. He turned to the crowd, trying to rally support, but the response was scattered. A few clapped, but the cheers for Theron overwhelmed, especially from women who felt the truth in her words. A young woman shouted, Charlize is right, don't push her, igniting another audience explosion. Theron, standing tall like a mountain, responded with a calm but commanding voice, ruining your show. No, Jimmy, I'm just refusing to be your puppet. I've spent my career fighting people who think women like me exist only to entertain, to smile, to endure. But today I'm done enduring. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the audience, as if speaking to each one of them. If you want a real show, demand the truth, not cheap jokes. Kimmel, cornered, made one last attempt to salvage things. Charlize, I'm sorry if you felt offended. I just wanted a fun interview, okay? Sit down, let's talk more about the movie. But his voice was now a weak plea, and Theron, with an unrelenting gaze, shook her head. Sorry. You're not sorry for offending me, you're sorry for the pushback. I'm not here to save your show, Jimmy. I'm here to defend what I believe in. She stepped away from her spot, her eyes scanning the audience, and declared, her voice thundering, if you can't respect my work, then I have no reason to stay. The studio exploded, the audience rising, cheers and boos swirling into a tornado. A group of women raised their phones high, shouting, Charlize, we're with you, while others booed, she's ruining the show. Theron, without looking back, walked slowly off the stage, each step a statement. Kimmel, left alone, tried to call after her. Charlize, come on, come back. But his voice was drowned out by the crowd, the band hastily playing an upbeat tune to fill the void, but the atmosphere was utterly chaotic. Backstage, Lisa rushed after Theron, her eyes a mix of worry and pride. You did it, she whispered, but Theron only nodded slightly, her gaze still blazing. Sarah, in the control room, laughed loudly, whispering into her headset, this is peak television. But the floor manager, pale as a sheet, shouted, cut the feed, cut it now. Yet the cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of this historic moment. The audience, unable to stay still, continued shouting, some standing with raised fists, others shaking their heads, arguing among themselves. Kimmel, alone on stage, forced a smile, raising his hand to the audience. All right, folks, that was, well, a memorable moment, right? But his voice fell flat, and the audience's laughter was sparse, not enough to mask the chaos. Theron, now gone from the wings, left the stage in a state of shock, like a battlefield after a war. Social media exploded, clips of the incident spreading at lightning speed. Theron, with her actions, not only walked off the stage but rewrote the rules, leaving an indelible mark on Hollywood history. The wings of Jimmy Kimmel Live were engulfed in chaos, the audience's shouts from the stage still roaring like an unyielding storm. Charlize Theron, stepping out of the spotlight, walked straight to the green room, her demeanor calm but her eyes burning like embers. Lisa, her assistant, hurried after her, heels clicking rapidly on the floor, her gaze a blend of pride and concern. In the control room, producer Sarah stood before the monitors, a triumphant smile spreading as ratings skyrocketed like a rocket. But the backstage atmosphere was like a pressure cooker, ready to explode. Lisa slammed the green room door shut, turning to Theron. "You just shook up all of Hollywood," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. Theron, sitting down and holding a glass of water, stared into the distance. "I just said what needed to be said," she replied, her voice low but firm. "They want a circus, but I'm not a clown." Lisa nodded, pulling out her phone, scrolling quickly. "Half pnowed really, system. Half the internet calls you a hero, the other half says you went too far." Theron smirked, not a smile but a resolute look. "They'll always be divided, but I'm not here to please everyone." On stage, Kimmel stood alone, the spotlight highlighting his pale face. He raised his hand, forcing a strained smile. "Well folks, what a night, huh?" he shouted, but the audience responded with scattered murmurs. The band hurriedly played an upbeat tune, trying to fill the void, but the atmosphere remained heavy as lead. Kimmel glanced toward the wings, where the floor manager was frantically signaling, mouthing, "Move on quick." He nodded, stepping back to his desk, but his shoulders slumped, as if the weight of the incident had settled on his back. Backstage, Sarah burst into the control room, her eyes gleaming. "We just made TV history," she shouted, clapping with the tech crew, but the floor manager, drenched in sweat, cut in. "History? You pushed Jimmy to the edge. Theron just turned the show into a battlefield." Sarah shrugged, her voice cool. "Ratings doubled, who cares? People will talk about this for weeks." But Lisa, just walking in, overheard, her gaze icy. "You think this is a game? Charlize isn't your puppet." Sarah smirked, but her eyes flickered, as if realizing the consequences were closing in. In the green room, Theron scrolled through her phone, seeing a message from a colleague. "Viola Davis, you spoke for all of us. Thank you." Theron smiled faintly, the first time that night, but the smile quickly faded. "Lisa, they'll try to turn this into a scandal," she said, her voice low. "But I don't regret it." Lisa nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing. You stood up for what matters." Theron looked out the window, the city lights twinkling, as if reflecting her resolve. On stage, Kimmel tried to finish the next segment, introducing another guest, but his voice felt hollow, lacking its usual sharpness. The audience remained restless, some leaving their seats, arguing among themselves. A young woman whispered to her friend, "Charlize was amazing. She's right about how they treat women." But a man nearby shook his head. "She overreacted. It's just a talk show." Twitter exploded, the clip of Theron walking off the stage hitting millions of views, with hashtags Respect Theron vying with Kimmel was right, splitting social media into two camps. Backstage, the production team held an emergency meeting, Sarah's voice drowning out the rest. "We need a press release. Say it was a misunderstanding." But the floor manager shook his head. "Misunderstanding? Theron just made us a laughingstock to the world." Kimmel, storming into the control room, threw his mic clip on the table, his voice sharp. "I told you not to put me in that position, Sarah." Sarah shrugged, but her eyes flickered with unease, knowing this wouldn't die down easily. In the green room, Theron stood, slipping on her coat, her gaze still resolute. "Let's go, Lisa. I've said what I needed to say." As she walked out of the studio, the audience's echoes still lingered, but she didn't look back. Kimmel's stage now was just a pile of ashes after the battle she left behind. The storm from Jimmy Kimmel Live didn't stop when Charlize Theron left the stage. It spread like wildfire across social media, turning that night into an indelible milestone. Within hours, the clip of Theron confronting Kimmel racked up tens of millions of views. Hashtags Theron vs Kimmel and Respect Theron dominating online, splitting the digital world into two factions, those hailing Theron as a feminist icon and those claiming she ruined an entertainment show. The studio, now silent, was a mere shadow of the ideological battle Theron left behind, but her story was rewriting headlines across Hollywood. The next morning, major outlets ran stories. Variety published Charlize Theron turns Jimmy Kimmel Live into a feminist platform, leaving Kimmel flustered. The Hollywood Reporter dug deeper. Theron didn't just walk off. She challenged a media system that dismisses women. But not everyone was supportive. Some commentators on social media tweeted, "Theron's too sensitive. Kimmel was just joking. She turned it into drama." These sparked fierce debates, with thousands responding, like one user who wrote, "She stood up for respect, something Hollywood has owed women for ages." In her quiet apartment, Theron sat by the window, morning light glowing on her face. Lisa, just arriving, handed her a coffee. "Have you seen Twitter? They're calling you a warrior," Lisa said, her voice tinged with pride. Theron shrugged, her gaze calm. I don't need titles. I just want Unbroken Spirit to be seen for what it is. But her phone buzzed incessantly with messages from colleagues. Margot Robbie wrote, "You spoke for all of us." A feminist activist texted, "Thank you for breaking the silence." Theron read them, didn't reply, but the corner of her mouth lifted slightly, as if knowing her actions had reached the hearts that needed them. In his office, Kimmel faced a tense production team. Sarah, still brimming with confidence, suggested, "Let's do a comedy bit about this, turn it into a joke." But Kimmel, his face weary, shook his head. "Don't you see? Theron made us look like fools." Days later, he went on air, his voice quieter than usual. "I want to apologize if I made Charlize Theron feel disrespected. That wasn't my intention." But the apology was criticized as half-hearted, with some tweets mocking, "Too late, Jimmy. Theron won." Still, Kimmel's loyal fans pushed back, arguing Theron overreacted, turning a talk show into politics. The incident didn't stop at the media. Unbroken Spirit, Theron's centerpiece, suddenly garnered unprecedented attention. Theaters reported surging ticket sales, and reviews praised the film for its powerful message. One critic wrote, "Theron doesn't just act, she lives the role, and her actions on Kimmel prove it." But there were detractors, some claiming she used the incident to promote the film. Theron, in a brief interview later, dismissed this. "I don't need drama to sell tickets. I need the truth." Theron's legacy wasn't just a viral moment. The incident became a catalyst for discussions about how media treats women. Online forums overflowed with stories from people inspired by Theron. A young woman tweeted, "I used to think I had to stay quiet to be accepted. Charlie showed me I can speak up." Feminist activists held panels, using the incident as an example of fighting gender stereotypes. Even Hollywood, notoriously slow to change, felt the pressure. Some producers publicly pledged more respect when working with actresses. Theron, back on set for a new project, remained herself, strong, focused, undistracted by the incident. One day in the makeup room, she stood before the mirror, her gaze steadfast. Lisa walked in holding a tablet, saying, "New article, calling you a game changer." Theron smiled faintly, not out of pride, but because she knew she did what was right. "The game needed changing long ago," she said, then returned to work, as if the incident was just a chapter in her long journey. As the set lights flared, Theron stepped into her new role, carrying a different strength, the strength of someone who stood up and didn't back down. The clash with Kimmel wasn't just a TV moment, it was a spark, igniting those who dared to demand respect. Audiences, whether they loved or hated Theron, couldn't deny she left her mark, not just on the stage but in Hollywood's heart. And as she looked into the camera, her eyes seemed to say, "This is just the beginning." The story of Charlize Theron confronting Jimmy Kimmel on Jimmy Kimmel Live reflects a profound reality in American society today. The fight for respect and fairness in public spaces, especially for women in environments dominated by entertainment and media culture. Theron, with her strength in refusing to be a puppet for Kimmel's disrespectful jokes, offers a vital lesson. Standing up for your values is necessary, even if it sparks controversy. In the context of 2025 America, where discussions about gender equality and media diversity remain heated, Theron's act of walking off the stage after being pushed with questions about her age and personal life mirrors the pressure women often face, to smile and endure to keep the peace. But she chose to challenge the system, as when she called out Kimmel for turning her work into a joke, emphasizing that entertainment shouldn't come at the cost of truth. The lesson here is, in work or life, everyone must learn to set clear boundaries, especially when facing unfair stereotypes or expectations. The audience's split reaction, with some supporting Theron and others calling her too sensitive, reflects America's polarization, where voices demanding change are often labeled over the top. Take inspiration from Theron. When you speak up for what's right, as she did for Unbroken Spirit and its feminist message, you not only defend yourself but inspire others. Despite divided social media or public opinion, staying true to your principles leaves a lasting legacy, as Theron's actions shook Hollywood. Subscribe to the channel to follow powerful stories like Charlize Theron's, and thank you for joining us. See you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring game-changing moments.